Again, I have a love-hate relationship with medication.
We know that you are also an advocate for mental health, and you are also a person with lived experience. If you may share with our audience a little bit about your journey with depression, and you've mentioned before you've also experienced PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So how has that been like for you, and what are you currently doing to manage these symptoms or challenges?
Okay, so my journey in mental health actually happened in my late teens.
Okay.
So that started in America a long time ago. And it was particularly, I think, two things. My family does have a predisposition to depression. Yeah, so it's a hereditary thing. But also at that time, both of my parents went back to Thailand because my dad had to do work, and I was left in America to fend for myself. But I was staying with host families and things. But I think there were so many different changes. So I did start to have the pre-depression at that time, though I didn't know it until I actually got diagnosed in my 20s.
Okay.
So in
years
my 20s,
later.
Years later.
Okay.
But as we talked about our my history, it's like it's all the way from then.
Right, right.
So in my 20s, when I was doing my master's degree, at the tail end of my master's degree, there were many things that happened. I was engaged. I was about to finish my MBA. I was deciding whether am I going to move back to Boston? Am I going to move back to Bangkok with my fiance, or what?
Right. Crossroads.
Yes. And it so happens that I got my heart broken. We won't go into that, but that happened. That happened. And because of that, and because I think I felt ashamed of already announcing the engagement, and he had done something not very good, and so there were all these things, and then of course the graduation, all these things, and I was supposed to actually go on to my PhD at that time, and that didn't happen because so many things came into my life at the same time that felt like problems, and that was the first time that I had my first kind of, you could say, episode. The first few days I was crying, and it's normal.
Of course.
My heart was broken. I don't know what to do. Am I going to do my PhD? Am I going to be able to go forward? You know, and then it extended. And in my mind was like, why am I still crying? I already feel like I should stop crying, but my eyes, physically, I couldn't control
you couldn't stop it,
I couldn't stop it. And then I had avoidance behaviors, like people would be leaving cakes at the door and food at the door, and I didn't want to see them. And it wasn't like me, you know, I'm very
You were
hospitable.
isolating yourself.
Yeah, I was isolating myself. And it got to the point where it's like, I'm not eating, I'm not seeing anyone, I can't, like the tears are going to turn dry pretty soon, but I can't stop them. And I thought, okay, I think I need some help. So alhamdulillah, I had always been very open to counseling. Because in America,
it's normal.
It's normal. You go to your guidance counselor for almost everything. So I was like, okay, where is the university guidance counselor? Let me go there. So they had a chat with me. The symptoms had been going on for a number of days already, so they had decided, okay, I probably need some kind of medication to help me just balance out my mood. So I started on a particular medication, and yes, it actually stopped the crying, and I could regulate myself physically, but mentally, unfortunately, I was like, I'm not okay. I might look okay, and I can function, and I can go to classes, I can go to work, but I'm not okay. Yeah, and so they put me through some breathing exercises and
some coping mechanisms.
Some coping mechanisms. But I tell you the truth, Anita, and I've said this before, I have a love-hate relationship with medication. It's like, I know that I need it sometimes, but I hate it. I hate it. I hate to be on it, and I hate how I feel when I'm on it.
When you're on it,
Yeah, it helps me to live my life, but I know that I'm not okay. Like in my mind, I still know. So I finished the course, and then I actually moved back to Boston, where my mother is. And I thought that, okay, I can move on from this. But I found out that depression isn't really something that you move on to. You move on from. It's something that you learn how to live with and cope. So we'll put that aside for a moment. I'll get to the coping and how I live with it now. But also, then this is more recent actually. I still had certain issues with anxiety attacks and not being able to come out of my own thoughts, and sometimes having triggers which I didn't understand. And it was decades later, more recent, like in the past decade, that I was furthermore diagnosed with CPTSD. So it's not just only PTSD, but complex PTSD, which comes from multiple points of trauma. And so many things made sense. Why am I reacting this way to certain words and situations where I felt, I didn't know where it was coming from, but I felt familiar with it, and so I would react in a bad way to it.
It would trigger you.
It would trigger me. And what I want to say about this is that it's always a good idea to get yourself checked out, because once you know what it is, that's when you can heal from it and address it.
You can do something about it.
So it's not, I'm not sharing this just to expose myself. I'm sharing this to let people know that, you know, if you yourself feel that there's just something wrong, you can't put your finger on it, just go and get yourself checked out. Alhamdulillah, it might be nothing. Alhamdulillah, and you just need some girlfriends to take you out for a weekend or something.
Talk
Alhamdulillah.
About it.
But maybe there's something there that you need a little bit more treatment for. So Alhamdulillah. So I have these two things. These are my two big things, the depression and the CPTSD. So coming to how I've always coped with it, actually. When I didn't know about the CPTSD, I just knew about the depression. Actually, once you've lived with depression for some time, you can feel when it's coming up. You can actually feel it physically.
It cripples in.
It's like I myself feel it from my spine, and it starts to creep up in front. And then as long as it's still here, it's okay. It's when it rises that becomes, so when I start to feel it creep in,
then you do something about
then I
it.
do whatever that I need to do, whether it's a walk or a trip or certain foods that I need to change, because all of these things play a factor.
Of course.
And again, I have a love-hate relationship with
medication.
So I treat it with the other things, the exercise, the cats, the whatever else that's going to increase my endorphins and my dopamine and these things, naturally. So that's the depression. I learned how to cope with it. I learned how to live with it.
Alhamdulillah.
And alhamdulillah, I have an employer, and this is so important for the employers out there. I have an employer who is understanding about it.
And supportive of it.
So when I tell them, you know, and I'll tell them early, I feel something creeping in, I might be a little bit slow today, you know, don't worry, I'm fine. It's just if you message me or whatever you need, I might be a little bit slow today and tomorrow. And they're very understanding, mashallah. Mashallah for employers like this who understand more about the mental health. Now,
but it's also because you're open about it. You're transparent about it. Because if not, they wouldn't know how to support it anyway. And they might think, oh, it's attitude, it's behavior. You know.
That's true. That's true. And then for the CPTSD, that actually took a lot of dua, because I didn't know what to do about it. Yes, I had a counselor. But counselors are so important. You have to really connect with them. You know, you might go through 2 or 3 or 4 before you actually get the counselor that is right for you. So I didn't really get that person that I needed. But alhamdulillah, I have Allah. So I asked Allah to help me on this. So I would have to, whenever I would be triggered, I would have to consciously make a note. Okay, this triggered me. These kinds of words trigger me. This kind of situation triggers me. I would do my own internal work. And alhamdulillah, I've learned, it's not like I learned how to do this yesterday, you know, I've had like 20 years of this learning. So whatever trigger it is, I will address it, and I will make the dua, I will do the sujood, I will, you know, I will figure out what that situation was that triggered me, and I will work on it. Work on it one at a time.